Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the first episode of the Schooley Mitchell Podcast, where we discuss business, entrepreneurship, and all things franchising. I'm Mike DeBoer, and with me is Schooley Mitchell founder Dennis Schooley. In this, our inaugural episode, we discuss why franchising is the best path for certain aspiring entrepreneurs who want to get into business for themselves. So, Dennis, thanks for joining me. Although I don't think you had a choice.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
Yeah, you're welcome. So, Dennis, I think we certainly get this question a lot, and I think a lot of people in franchise development in general get this question a lot. Why franchising? Why, when you kind of started Schooley Mitchell, did you decide that franchising was the strategy that we were going to take to kind of grow and scale our business?
And I mean, it was not an easy decision when we first started. And I mean, we knew we had a service that was needed and required in the business world. And we knew, we wanted to approach both Canada and the United States with the opportunity. And of course, then we had to decide, all right, do we hire people, East and West, North and South in two countries, needing to motivate, hire, train, fire if they don't work out, all those sorts of things? Or do we establish a franchise system where each person has their own business and they're building their own book of business, their own asset, their own freedom to do certain things in operating their business, and yet we would take a small part for developing great systems that could be replicated, which is what a franchise system is. And so we chose the latter. And that was a long time ago, but we feel it was the right decision, and it's really proved to be beneficial for a lot of people that have changed their lives by building a Schooley Mitchell franchise across both countries.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we talk with thousands of people a year who are, thinking of maybe, getting into business for themselves. And I think for a lot of people, they want to be entrepreneurs, but they don't necessarily have the big idea or want to create the infrastructure of their own business. So could you, Dennis, kind of talk about what does it look like to start a business from scratch? Because I know you've done it. You're an accountant by trade, and I think most of the people listening can probably tell by your personality. But you've started your own businesses from scratch, but now you build a franchise system. So what do you think the difference is for people that want to get into business, but don't necessarily know where to get started or how to come up with the concept?
Yeah, and first of all, that is a decision each person has to make. But if you are going to start your own business, there's a lot of things that you have to create in order to make that business flow and go. And in a franchise, the whole idea is that it is there already if it's a good system and it can be replicated. I mean, there's a lot of statistics out there that claim how much more effective franchise is in terms of success and failure versus a standalone. I don't want to quote any of those statistics. You never know where they come from, who made them up, what parameters were involved, all those kinds of things. But the concept is simply defensible. It's logical to say, do I have a higher chance of success if I do everything on my own or in a franchise system? I believe the franchise system certainly creates a lot more stability for all those things for someone that wants to get into a business. Like, first of all, you're not on your own. There's people to talk to, hopefully in the head office, that have already established the business protocol. There's other franchisees that are doing the very same thing every day that you can talk to and relate your good ideas and your challenges to. All those things that you need to create in order to run in our case, a professional business, like every email, every letter, every checklist, every agreement that you would need to operate a professional business, you have to do that on your own. If you're on your own, that's already there in a franchise. So really what it means is, you can focus on things that are beneficial rather than on those administrative things that you need to get to that beneficial part. So all of that's what a franchise brings to the table versus a standalone. And I have done both. And it was a lot of time and a lot of effort to build all those things to get that business flowing. And then doing it in a franchise scenario, we actually did it again, but we created it for everyone else to replicate and operate without having to do those things.
Yeah. And in terms of, our business, Dennis, we've invested a lot in the support and making sure that franchisees are able to collaborate. So could you tell me a little bit more specifically for anyone that's listening, kind of the direction that we took in making sure that, the brand was strong and the support was strong and the operating tools were strong so that franchisees could be successful within our kind of greater system?
Yeah, and I mean, it all comes down to proving the concept in the beginning, which is what we did. And we grew fairly slowly and methodically in our first 10 years,
Yeah.
15 years even, as we continued to add new protocols and put new systems into place. But it was all designed to help those franchisees that are either operating at the time or the future franchisees to be able to take that and then take it to a higher level in terms of what they could achieve for themselves, because we were able to do that. So, whether that's support systems, and we've got, at this point in time, we've got over 160 people, 165 people working in our central office, our head office, to support all of our franchisees, and all those things that you need to create, like the systems and the tools and the software and all of that. That's what we've concentrated on. And I think we've got a pretty tight system right now where a person that comes in can use all those tools and systems and replicate them.
Right, absolutely. And the other thing, Dennis, I think the real benefit of a franchise system too is kind of that peer-to-peer. I know we have our annual conference every year, and I think it's so invaluable for people to be able to be together with other folks that are running the same business as them, but with their own spin and their own ideas and best practices. But how important is the franchise model, if it's done right, to have franchisees be able to kind of maybe partner together or pick each other's brain or educate each other while also being educated by the corporate staff as well?
There's so many things that come into play there when you facilitate that kind of interaction. You mentioned the annual conference, but we have group meetings, we have monthly roundtables, all those sorts of things to facilitate what you just said. Because on your own, you don't have a benchmark for normal, right?
Yeah.
You don't know what you're kind of guessing. You're looking at other people in the industry maybe, but you don't really have anybody to really collaborate with every day. In our world, we do. And at our annual conference, we have all of our franchisees get together. And I mean, when I look at that, and I sit back and watch a little bit, and I see groups of franchisees over in the corner talking to each other, or they're having breakfast or lunch or dinner together, or they're out and having a beer together. But there's always different groups interacting. And we even facilitate a series of roundtables at our annual conference for that very purpose. And we facilitate regular roundtables on a virtual basis for our franchisees to do that. And I think that's ultra important, because when you have to make every decision on your own on what you think is best, sometimes you make good decisions, sometimes you don't. And I'm not saying every decision is going to be perfect, but when you can bounce it off other people that are doing the same thing, or even in our case, head office that has established it in the first place, that creates a whole different dynamic in terms of what you're going to do and make that final decision in terms of how you go forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a big part of certainly our business is that kind of borrowed credibility. When you're a brand new franchisee, you've never got a client yourself, but we've worked with over 34,000 clients, right? And so many testimonials and stories that new franchisees can share, because ultimately that's their story when they become a part of our franchise system too. So can you kind of speak about that a little bit, about how someone that joins tomorrow is able to kind of get access to our 2 decades of success in history?
Well, that is really one of our major messages in our initial training course, is that this is a we, not an I thing. If you want the I thing, then go do it yourself. If you want the power of the we, which is all the research we've done, like you said, all those thousands of clients that we've done, all the experience of hundreds of franchisees out there, that's what you can bring to the table for every single client or every single prospect you talk to. We're talking about all of that, not just what I can do for you, but what I can deliver to you from all the values that we've created over time as a group of hundreds of people. And that's so much more powerful, whether that's to a prospect or to a client, when they're trying to make a decision about how they should go forward with their own decision making. We bring a lot to the table because of that.
Yep, absolutely. And to sort of wrap things up, Dennis, I think every brand is looking for a specific type of person in a franchisee. Could you speak maybe more generally to what kind of person is franchising right for, and then maybe what kind of person is going out and doing their own thing, starting something from scratch, right for, and then more specifically, if they decide franchising is the route they want to go, what is Schooley Mitchell looking for in characteristics and background of people we want to bring on board as franchisees?
Yeah, and every franchise system will tell you that, you need someone that is willing to follow a system, because that's what we created, is a system based on our experience and the experience of hundreds of franchisees, again, that can be replicated. But that does mean that if a franchisee is going to join as a new person rather than on their own, they do have to understand there's a system to follow. If you want to do everything exactly the way you want to do it with nobody else telling you or asking you, then you shouldn't join a franchise system.
Right.
But the value is the fact that those things are there for you to follow. And the better you can follow that system and use the tools and the advice of the people in the system, the more effective you're going to be. And it takes out that lone wolf stuff. And I mean,
Right.
there is a little bit you give up in terms of control. Now, each franchise is different. Our franchise in particular, there's a lot of autonomy that, we're not, I always say this, and we're not a quarter ounce of mustard in every burger kind of franchise.
Right.
So there is a lot of autonomy, but there are systems to follow. And if you're unwilling to follow or learn the things that the franchisee does and sort of adapt your own, bring your skills and talents and motivation to the table, but use the tools that are there. If you're not wanting to do that, then don't be a franchise.
Right.
And there is value in the brand and the support systems and the training systems and all of that. So that's the benefit of it. But you do give up a little bit of control and brand control and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we found that the most successful franchisees in our system listen to their coaches and they follow the training. And I remember we had somebody that said, I'm going to follow the system step by step to prove Dennis wrong, because he thought he could prove you wrong, and he ended up being really successful, right? So that's what you got to do, and certainly in our model.
And he wasn't saying that in a malicious way.
No, exactly.
I want to do it. I want to prove him wrong.
Yeah.
Meaning he wants to test all the things that we taught him, but he found out, what?
Worked.
We weren't wrong.
Yeah,
it does work exactly how it was if you apply the heat, so to speak, to the recipe, right? You got to put the motivation in and do the activities. And that's exactly what he did. And he became very wealthy in a short period of time.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Now, very last thing, Dennis, and I know kind of unrelated to what we've talked about, but we always hear, people talking about the franchise industry. And I know you have an opinion on, it's really not an industry, it's a business model. We're in the business of cost reduction, and McDonald's is in the business of burgers and fries. But can you kind of speak to that a little bit? Because it's something we hear so much, but this is not an industry. It's a growth strategy, right?
Exactly. It kind of drives me nuts. And it's become so common where people don't pay attention to the language they use, and you're right. What is the franchise industry? It doesn't exist, right? It is a strategy. It's a model that's followed by McDonald's and Burger King and Schooley Mitchell and, hundreds of others, but it is a model to execute. It is not an industry on its own. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, exactly. We hear it all the time. So I wanted to get your take on that, because I know it drives you a little bit crazy. But anyway, that is it for our episode, Dennis. But anything to add for anyone that's watching and thinking, is franchising right for me, or is Schooley Mitchell right for me? Anything you want to add before we wrap up?
Not really, other than, each person should make a list of pros and cons. What are the pros of me doing something on my own and being that lone wolf? And what are the cons of that? And then what are the pros of joining a Schooley Mitchell type franchise system as an alternative? And if you do that proper pros and cons analysis, you're going to be able to match your own sort of dreams and desires to whichever one is the best for you. And we think we're the answer in a lot of cases, not every case at all. But if you do that proper pros and cons analysis, you're going to make a much better choice. And we will help you with that.
Yeah, I think it never hurts to at least learn and see what's out there. And I think so many people, the first step is the hardest, which is just reaching out and saying, hey, let's have a conversation and see if this is the right fit for me. So it never hurts to at least, figure out what there is that's out there.
Well, I suppose one of the biggest fallacies out there is that franchising is about burgers and muffler parts. It's not. There are a lot of models. In our particular case, it's a professional services model, and franchising lends itself perfectly to it. Franchising is a distribution model at its core. Usually it's coffee grounds and hamburger meat that's being distributed. In our case, it's knowledge and training and databases that we distribute in a wide basis, and it works perfectly for us.
Right. Yeah. Completely agree. So Dennis, thanks for joining. And thanks everybody for listening. This is the Schooley Mitchell Podcast, our first episode, and we'll have many more to come. So thanks, Dennis, for your thoughts.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
All right. You're welcome.